We are going to be live here every Friday in July at noon. We're going to be looking at paintings from our collection. And here is one of those paintings. One of the cool things about being online is we can look really closely and zoom in. Normally we are protecting our paintings from the humidity of our breath. We're protecting our paintings from the oil in our fingerprints. But we have a very high resolution copy of this painting that we can zoom in on. So once again, this is Sarah for Penobscot Marine Museum. This is a vessel named the Harvard. The Harvard is a bark. A bark has 3 masts, as you can see on the painting here. The first 2 masts have square sails. Square sails run perpendicular to the hull of the ship. They are very good at catching a lot of air and pushing the ship forward quickly. The Harvard was a clipper ship. It was very fast and it carried 1,000 tons of cargo. The third mast in the back is a schooner rig. It has schooner sails on it. So these are fore and aft sails. The fore and aft sails run parallel to the hull of the vessel, and they are very maneuverable. You can catch wind from multiple directions, and that allows greater maneuverability of your vessel. And a vessel like this, a bark with 3 masts, with 2 with square sails and 1 with a schooner rig, is a very versatile. You can go fast, you can maneuver around. It's got all kinds of different sails that lets you do all kinds of different things. We're going to zoom in and take a look closer at this painting and see what else we can see here. The front of the vessel is the bow, the back of the vessel is the stern. Maneuver around. It's got all. We've got, there's a little man here in the middle who's got a white hat, different from the other crew that we can see on board. I wonder if that means this is the captain. The Harvard was built in 1878 in Newburyport, Mass. But we're going to be talking about the captain who started commanding the vessel in 1890. His name is Lincoln Colcord. I'm going to go back in time a little bit to when Colcord married his wife, Jane French Sweetser, in 1881. They are both from Searsport. That's a little town on Penobscot Bay. It's where our museum is, Penobscot Marine Museum. They both grew up in Searsport. They married on a June morning in 1881. That same day, they got on a train, went down to New York City, got onto a ship, and proceeded to sail around the globe because he's a captain and that's his job. When they were off the coast of Australia, their first daughter, Joanna, was born. On their way back around, coming towards home, going around the tip of South America, which is dangerous, cold, stormy, icy, lots of rocks. They had made it around the Cape. They were in the middle of a storm. The vessel was leaking, and Captain Colcord was with his crew pumping water, trying to make sure the vessel didn't founder with the water that was coming in, when the steward came over to the captain saying, your wife needs you. Captain Colcord went down into the cabin, delivered their second child, a boy named Lincoln, for his father. They limped back home, leaking the whole way. It was a very old ship. They got rid of the ship right after that journey. So these two children that were born on this honeymoon voyage, Joanna and Lincoln, they grew up sailing with their family. And although their mom, Jane, did not like the anxiety of sailing, as you can imagine, with all of those storms and leaky vessels that she went through, the children absolutely loved it. And here they are, little Lincoln with a goat, and Joanna, they look like they're having a little too much fun. The goat is a very useful thing to bring with you. You have no fresh food on a ship. And so the goat was there to provide fresh milk for the children. And a goat is a useful animal made for mountain climbing and able to handle the rocking, steep deck of the ship.
Sarah, I just want to interrupt you real quick to give a shout out to Ross and Billy for liking our video. And you have a nice little audience, Sarah, just so you know.
Thanks. I'm so excited that you're with us here today with Penobscot Marine Museum, looking at our paintings from our collection. So this is the Bark Harvard, and the family, Captain Colcord with his wife Jane, his children Joanna and Lincoln, they lived in the cabin in the aft part of the ship. So the back part of the ship, you can see there's a door right here. That's how they could get down into the cabin. And how rare is this? We actually have images of the inside of the cabin of the Harvard. So we have this 19th century painting, and we also have photographs like this one that I'm bringing up for you now. So this is the interior of the captain's cabin. You can see this window over here was painted with red decorations, and you can see the name Harvard in reverse, so that when the vessel was in port, anyone walking along the dock could see this beautiful red and white image with the name of the vessel. And you can see this is a very well appointed cabin, all kinds of objects from Asia, porcelains, fans, rattan furniture. This was the end of the 19th century. So we've got fancy Victorian furniture in the cabin. This is a berth, a place to sleep. You can see the curtains hanging in front. It's a very small space, and that was actually a good thing. When the boat is pitching and heaving, you want to be held in there so you're not tossed out. And here is another view of the cabin. You can see two doors looking back into an area where they had their meals. There's a skylight to shine light down onto the table. And these two children look mischievous to me. I don't know what they're up to. It makes me very curious. So let's go back to this painting. So this is the Harvard, it's a bark. And this painting shows some other people here. There's some guys doing work. This vessel needed 15 men to sail it. And we see some guys here. There is a capstan. And as soon as I get my drawing tool up here, so this capstan could hold poles that would be used as handles. And this sailor could push the poles around, turning it round around, winding up a rope. It could be attached to the anchor. We can see this big anchor here weighing many, many pounds, 1,000 pounds or more. Or you could also use a capstan like this to pull ropes to pull up cargo or lower cargo down into the hold. These men, all sailors, have an incredibly dangerous job. Storms are an obvious hazard. But even just in regular fair weather, they're climbing up these masts hundreds of feet in the air. The boat is pitching and heaving on waves. Sometimes you're over the water on one side, sometimes you're over the water on the other. In rain, all that rigging is very slippery and you're trying to hang on while you grapple with extremely heavy canvas sails, trying to furl or unfurl, let them out or pull them in as needed for sailing the vessel. I've been reading ship's logs and there are just interspersed all sorts of different tragedies. One mariner hit in the head with a yard. That's this bar that goes across the mast holding the sail. Other sailors die of sickness. We've heard recently about sickness spreading quickly in the tight quarters of a ship.
Sarah, can I interrupt you real
Yes.
quick? Just like to say hello back to Frank. Thanks for joining us. And Frank says, so nice to stumble onto a maritime painting discussion.
Excellent, thank you. I'm so glad to have you all with me. I love talking about history. I'm Sarah from Penobscot Marine Museum, and this is one of the paintings from our collection. And so the crew were in the front of the vessel. And so you can see there's another raised portion in the front part, that's called the forecastle. The front was less comfortable. The stern of the ship is sort of bouncing and hitting the waves, bouncing around. It's not as comfortable as the back. And that's why the regular crew have to sleep up there, whereas the higher ranking crew get to be in the back. And that's where the family with Jane and Joanna and Lincoln would have been in the stable back part. But they lived on this ship for months, sometimes years at a time. And the crew was a big part of their lives. Joanna and Lincoln later in life write fondly about some of their friends who were on the crew of the Harvard. So this man is Albee. He was the cook, and he worked as cook for Captain Colcord for years and years, and they were close friends. Albee is described as a man of strong personality and honorable. And there's characters later on based on Albee described as being wise as an owl. Another of the crew was First Mate John Forsyth. He came from Dorset, England. Albee was from China. John Forsyth was described as even-tempered, ready with a laugh and a good word. And these quotes are from Letters from Sea, which is an excellent collection of letters and reminiscences of Joanna and Lincoln from their childhood sailing on the Harvard and other vessels. The Colcords are sailing at the end of the 19th century, and this is the end of the age of sail. Steamships have been around for decades by then, and the engines of steamships have been further and further improved over the years. And steamships are very predictable. They're not necessarily more efficient or faster than a sailing ship, but with a steamship, you could say when you might arrive and be somewhat accurate, which you cannot do with a sailing vessel. And although Maine was building large downeasters, doing their best to compete with the steamships, it was getting harder and harder to get work on a sailing vessel. And the family saw this firsthand. They were getting stuck in ports, waiting and waiting to get a new job to go to the next port. And because of this, although little Lincoln wanted more than anything to be a sea captain like his father, his mom said, nope, you have to stay home and go to school. So his last voyage with his family was at age 14. And after that, he had to stay at home. Joanna and her mom continued sailing with Captain Colcord. And the family missed so much being separated and wrote many, many letters back and forth. And this is a treasure trove for us historians with all kinds of details about what daily life on board a sailing vessel is like. I'm going to go back to the ship again. So the Harvard made several voyages, at least 7. The first voyage with Captain Colcord in 1890, they went all the way over to China. So they started in New York City. They were carrying case oil. That's a 19th century term for a tin of kerosene. Does that sound like a safe cargo to you? Thousands of tins of kerosene. They took the case oil to Penang, which is on the border of Thailand and Southeast Asia. They dropped half of the cargo of case oil in Penang and took the other half to Singapore, right nearby. In Singapore, they took on an unusual cargo. Special ports openings were cut into the bow of the Harvard to allow huge logs of ironwood to go into the hold. These logs were 90 feet long. At the base, they were 3 feet square in cross section, so huge, heavy beams. They weighed several tons each. These pieces of ironwood got put into the hold. They sailed up to Shanghai, where the ironwood was going to be used to build a temple. The ship went on to Hong Kong, where they took on a general cargo and came back to New York. So that's an example of one of the journeys that the Harvard took with the Colcord family. They went to China a couple of times. We'll be talking about China in 2 weeks. So join us. We'll be here every Friday at noon, Facebook Live, Penobscot Marine Museum. And in 2 weeks, we'll be talking more about China. This painting here that we're looking at now was painted in China. I wish so much I knew more about the artist, but we can see over in the corner a Chinese vessel, a junk, with that distinctive rounded covering in the back. I have one more story for you about another journey that the Harvard took in 1898. The Harvard was sent down to Barbados, and Colcord went by himself. This family stayed at home. I'm guessing that's because it was probably expected to be a short journey. They stopped in Santos, Brazil, and then went to Barbados. In Barbados, they got word to head to Turks Island in the Bahamas. The job was they were to pick up a load of salt on Turks Island to take to Providence, Rhode Island. The captain writes from the Bahamas home to his family saying he can't wait to come home and see them. It takes several days to get from Barbados to the Bahamas. And one evening after several days, they see the light of Turks Island Lighthouse ahead of them in the dark. Now, Turks Island has a 4-mile reef extending out from the mouth of the harbor. They know about the reef. They're tacking to one side. They stay well to one side of the reef, doing everything they can to avoid it. But some uncharted current must have been pushing them towards the reef, because as they sail in the dark towards the light, the vessel suddenly smashes into the reef, bounces back, recoils off the reef. A swell of a big wave comes, lifts the ship back up, and smashes it down on the reef so hard it sticks there. They run down into the hold, water is pouring in, and they know that that's the end of the Harvard. They scramble to get the boats out. All of the crew gets into small boats. And so imagine there's a very high wind, high waves. Now they're in little boats rowing by hand, trying to get to safety on Turks Island. They do make it with all hands saved. A few days later, Captain Colcord goes back to the ship to check on it and finds robbers rummaging through all of their things. And as a little later, Colcord scares them off with a revolver, and a little later, as he's walking through town on Turks Island, he sees his wife's slippers on the feet of an elder African Caribbean woman. I think they try to see the humor in it, but Captain Colcord loved this vessel, and the children write about how very sad he was losing the Harvard. I am so glad to have you all with us here today at Penobscot Marine Museum. I love talking about history, and I'm so excited to have had this chance to show you one of our paintings. And
Sarah?
Yes.
Can you, we have a nice audience right now. Could you
Awesome.
just give us one more close-up look of the deck?
Yes, absolutely. This is Colcord on a later ship, the State of Maine, looking very happy. I think he loves being out at sea. Yeah, so let's look again at this painting of the Harvard, a bark. This is the deck. We've got a little guy in the back steering. Hundreds and hundreds of lines for controlling sails. Every single one had a different name. You had to know every name for everyone. The red wheel here is probably a bilge pump for pumping out water. Looks like there's another capstan or winch next to the captain, or if I'm right about that being the captain, being Colcord there. and then the forecastle in the front where the crew stay, and a couple of crew in the bow of the ship. Please send us your questions. We love questions and comments, and we love hearing from you. We were so happy to have you with us here today, Penobscot Marine Museum. We are going to be here every Friday at noon in July on Facebook Live.
Okay, let's wrap
Anything
that
else,
up.
Gina?
I think we're good. Thank you.
You are very welcome.